Hey guys, um, trying to help you guys get a better grasp and make our workflow more efficient all at the same time. I made a template to help with the big mills kind of setup. Uh, the first part of this video, I'm going to do a rundown of kind of the structure of the template and where everything is, how I put it together, and it's going to touch on some of the principles that I've been trying to get you guys used to, like components, visibility, eyeballs, making active components when you're working within them, construction geometry, and joints. There's a lot of stuff that lives in here, even though all you're seeing right now is that joint origin is visible. That's on purpose. Everything else is hidden on a component level, not deep down in the body tree, so it should be easy. There's also a setup made in the manufacturer side with two scribe toolpaths, one for the corners and one for burnouts that are already made. So, like I said, the first part of this video is going to go through the structure, and then I'm going to close it down, reopen it, show you where the file is located, and how it would be put to use with a part. So, starting from the top down, the very top level is active. As we go down further, our origin, which before I was showing you guys to turn it on and turn it off so you can see where you're working with. It also is related to the view cube, so if you see your X, Z, and your Y is hidden behind there, that's your green is Y, red is X, blue is Z. What I did with this joint origin is I made a joint origin and labeled it for part that's visible, and that is right on top of the origin of the file. So that way you don't have to keep coming back in here and turning this origin on and off. There's a hidden joint origin for the tables. As we go down, there's some joints that are all labeled, and that's where the tables are joined to their joint origin. They're all hidden. There's some joints for the clamps, for the auto clamping and auto setup blocks. Those are labeled, so when you come in and you make a joint in your particular file, it would just say joint with a number behind it. That way you know which one, you're not searching for which one if you need to make edits or which one you did. These pre-made ones are all labeled. I have a sketch in here that is hidden. You can turn it on and off, but that is the one driving the first corner scribe. I have a construction part midplane, and that is the midplane of the thickness. What this would be used for is if your part did have two setups, and you have your clamps arranged for your first setup, and you wanted to mirror your clamps about the thickness for a second setup. If your part requires it, you would do the mirror that I've shown you before, mirror your components, select the clamps that you wanted to be mirrored, and then you would mirror about this part midplane. That's always going to adjust with the part. A lot of these things are going to adjust with the part when I show you how to use this thing in practice. You have machine tables. We have every machine table. Other than the A mills, they have their own fixture. So there's the 30, the 40, Sigma 1, Sigma 2, 3, and the Mazak. They're highlighted in blue, just scrolling over them, but if you turn the visibility on, you can see each one individually. So you can pick your table. There's a clamps parent component with subcomponents below it. There's a 5/8 stud assembly if you feel like using those. There's a 3/4 inch stud assembly if you feel like using those. There's auto clamps. These will resize to your part, which is going to be really nice if the part allows it. If it's just a straight line burn, we don't have burnouts that we're missing, or say a drilled hole that we're trying to avoid with clamps, a funny weldment. So I'd say about a little over half of our parts that these auto clamps are going to work out just fine for us and make less work for us. If we don't have one, I've made movable clamps in here, and these are hidden even below this level. There's one single 5/8 style toe clamp, a 3/4, which is bigger, toe clamp, and then the large U clamp. There's only single ones of those, so you're still going to have to be familiar with using the move copy, rotating it, sliding your part around, or the clamp around, making copies of it, maybe mirroring it across the mid plane or a section of the part. Those are going to be more individualized work, but there is one each of those style clamps already in here below this movable clamps tree. I made a empty component for the 6-inch Kurt vise and the 8-inch Kurt vise. By the end of the weekend, I will have those put in as well and mounted to the table. Put on a setup blocks, the same thing with the clamps. There is a version of auto 246 blocks. We'll turn on the front and the back just to show you. Along with the clamps, I have them both left and right. I have clamps on front and back and left and right that are going to auto adjust, and you can turn your visibility on if you want them all the way around, or only on left and right, or only on front and back. I'm going to turn off the left and right ones right now. So those are in there, and those will auto adjust with the size of the part as well. So they'll work a little over half the time. Otherwise, same principle as the clamps. I have a single 1, 2, 3 blocks and 2, 4, 6 blocks in each orientation. So I have one at 1 inch high, 2 inch high, 3 inch high, and the same thing with 2, 4, 6 blocks. So those would be on the programmer to move them, rotate them, mirror them, make copies to fit that particular part. So all those are pre in here. Now there's an empty component, empty container for your part, for a part copy. So if you needed to patch some stuff that's breaking through, if you need to fill a hole or add something, you would do it on the copy of a part and keep the integrity of the original part, and then your stock would go in here. In your manufacturer side, said there's already a pre-made setup, and we're going to edit this and I'll show you in practice. But this model, the reason you're going to put the model in the empty part component container is because it's pointing to look there already. Same thing with your stock. The stock is from solid, pointing to look to stock already. I have a note just for first setup in this one. You could change it to what you wanted. The same thing here, say you knew that all of your programs on this first setup are going to be top and then 1 for first setup, or lower shoe or something. You could put lower 1, and that prefix is going to show up when you go to post-process. So then as you're post-processing, you would just type like 01, and then in your next program you could type 02, third program you could type 03, like that. So I would put the prefix in here, that if you know what it's going to be, it could correlate to the name of the part or the part number, however you guys normally do it. Your fixtures, I didn't point it to anything yet, so what you would do if you wanted your clamps, your setup blocks, and your table, you would turn your fixture on, and then when this is highlighted blue, you come into your machine tables, pick the table that you're using, come into your clamps, and pick which clamps, whether it be the auto clamps, and you were using the front and back clamps or the left and right clamps, or if you ended up making your own clamp setup and moving those around, you would pick which clamps you wanted to be your fixtures, and the same exact principle with your setup blocks. If it was the auto 246 blocks, you could expand it and choose your front and back ones or your left and right ones. If you moved your own 246 blocks 2 inches high around and made your copies, you would select those, and that way your toolpaths and your simulations would recognize those as fixtures. You also have, as I mentioned before, a scribe that is scribing the 2 corners for you as well. That's going to update with your part, and you have a separate one to do the burnouts where you can select the burnouts on that part. So I'm going to close this down, and then I'm going to reopen it, show you where it's located, and then how to use it with a part. So we'll close this. We're back at the beginning. We're going to go into master templates, machine templates. The only 2 you need to worry about in here are going to be the Viper and YCM template that the emails are going to use, and then every other machine whether it's red angle work or the big mills or the Mazak, we'll use this same template. So we'll open it, and very first step, before anything, although Fusion has version history, I really don't want to be looking through and promoting old versions because someone saved over this. So File, Save As, pick your destination. We're going to go into Temp, we'll go into Matthew Practice here, and we'll just label this. I'll make up a part number and hit Save. So it is going to save that there. We still have this empty interface, and the only thing visible is that joint origin for locating the part. So we'll come into Temp and we will pick a part. There's the one we just saved, this File As, and we'll grab this one here. So when we insert it, we want to make sure we still are noticing which component is active, because when we insert, it will place it under the active component. Since our active component is the top layer now, if I inserted it, it would show up at the bottom of this browser tree. We could then go and drag it into whatever other component we wanted to, but it's much easier to just make this part active since that's where we want it. You can see it's empty now, and when I hit insert in the current design, it places it nested below this empty part container, like what is intended, and there's a link on there to that data. So we'll hit OK, and then we're going to go ahead right away and make a joint. So there's a joint, and we're going to find the center of this part, which is this square. The square node looks different and denotes a center versus like the center marks of radiuses or these triangle marks on edges. That square is denoting the center of the face that you're selected on. So we'll click that, and then we can see this joint origin for part that highlights in the browser when we hover over it. We're going to put it there, and now our part is centered just like a line to CS in the previous software. So now that's where we want it. If we had a burnout file for this, which we don't, we could either open the burnout file, see if we have one. This obviously isn't the right one, but if we had that, we could come in here, extrude this burnout the size that we wanted, hit save, and then this would update and be a solid instead of just a 2D, and then we could insert this into our template. We could also activate stock, bring the 2D into this file and extrude it within this one file. I don't have a burnout, so I'm going to show you another method and show you at the same time making a copy. So we'll do the copy, and then we'll activate part copy since we want it copied in there. We'll hit paste. Now we have another copy, and this is where it came in the file. We're going to break the link on this one because this will be the one that we modify. We're going to hide our part, activate the visibility for this joint origin for the part, not for tables. Make another joint so that they're overlaid for the copy of the part and then to the joint origin. Now if I turn my original part back on, they're overlaid completely in the center. We can turn off part copy. Now we will come and activate our stock, so that way everything we're doing right now is being built below the stock. It is empty. What I'm going to do is make a sketch on the bottom. This is just one method for your burnouts. Like I said, if you have a good burnout file, you can extrude from that, import that in. We're sketching on the bottom. I'm going to project that entire face and hit OK. Now I have all this purple projected geometry. I'm going to measure my part thickness, 4 inches, and I know when I extrude this, I need to come up from where my sketch is. So I'll hide my part, I'll go to a top view, and I will finish my sketch. I will extrude window the entire sketch geometry. takes a second to grab all those sketch points. And then I'll come and I will unselect my burnouts. There and there, and I think these three are also burnouts. And I will come up, and you can see that it says negative distance for the direction that I'm going. So I'll type that negative 4 inches for the thickness. Now I have a stock body overlaid, and it was with when my stock component was active, and if I turn on my part, you can see them overlaid right there. I'll turn that stock off. Now, as I showed you before in the first part of the video, the structure of it and how everything is in here but invisible, we can go ahead and I'll turn on the Mitsubishi 30 table. I will turn on the visibility of the auto clamps, and I will turn on the setup of the auto setup blocks that are oriented the 4-inch highway. It's the most common way of setting things up. I'll turn on the front ones and the back ones. I know I won't be clamping on left and right, so in my clamps, in these auto clamps, I'm going to turn the visibility off of the right clamps and the left clamps. Once again, they're named. So we can see that the way the template's set up, it's 10 inches from Z0 to the table height. That was just the default that I made. Our 246 blocks are not touching the part. They're not even under the part from this view. Our clamps are out in space. The way to fix this and the way that everything auto updates, including the clamps that move, the table that moves, the setup blocks that move, as well as the sketch that drives the first scribe on the corners. All we're going to do is measure, and we're going to select the bottom left corner, and then we'll go to top furthest right corner of the part and turn on this XYZ delta check mark. That will give us the X, Y, and Z limits of our part. So 80, 32, and 4. We'll come up and we'll change our parameters. If you don't have it on your toolbar, it's under the modify, change parameters. So you can see it move. We'll do a top view here. And we'll go to part length is already at 80. Part width will update to 32. And our part height will update to 4 inches. And then hit OK. So we're describing our part to the parameters that are driving all these joints and sketches. And our 246 block moved underneath the part. The table height and blocks moved to the bottom of our part. And the clamps are now clamping on the part. I realize this isn't going to work for every part, especially when we have funny shapes, burnouts, or holes we're trying to avoid. But a lot of the time it will work. You can see that they're on the part. We're not obstructing any holes right now. The bed of this table doesn't line up. You could go ahead and you could make your own clamps, and like I said, with the movable clamps set up, do your own. If you really wanted it on this table, you could also switch which table you're using. So instead of using the big MVR 30 table, we can flop it over and use SIG3. You can see that we're lining up pretty good with those T-slots. So now we're all set up. Said we have a part copy that's overlaid, that has a broken link. We can go and modify that one. We still have good data integrity because our original part is linked to the part file, and the stock body, if I turn it on, is there. When we hop over into manufacture, we see something empty ghosted, and that's going to be normal. It's kind of pointing you to go and edit your setup to make it for this part. So as I showed you at the first part of the video, this is pointing to part, and we did put the model we brought in into this part component, into this empty container. It's pointing to look there, and we'll find that. That'll be your part. Your stock is pointing to the stock component, which we made a stock body underneath that. So that'll update. Our part number is 234, so what I would do is just go 234 and then a 1 for the first setup, so that way my prefix is handled when I start posting. The fixtures, I would come and pick out the tables that I'm using. So Sigma 3 I'm using auto clamps, and I'm using front back clamps. And on my setup blocks, I'm using the auto blocks, and I'm using the back and the front blocks. Before you hit OK, as I've showed you before, the way that I set up this template and the way we're moving everything to the origin of the part allows us to leave this at model orientation. If you start doing things in the future where you're not using this template and you get comfortable enough, I still suggest using the select z-axis, or the z-axis, plane, and x-axis, where you go there, you select the top face as your z and select the long edge as your x axis, so that your coordinate system is oriented to your part correctly. This setup, this pre-made setup, is set to model orientation and model origin, and that is because in the design side, our upfront work, we are aligning our part to the model origin using that joint origin that I made. Be aware of this. You don't want to get burned by a part that comes in oriented funny and you're not you don't make sure that you use the joint correctly. So I would still recommend the Z and X axis plane, but this does allow it to be set up for the model orientation and model origin with that setup, the way that we're doing that. When we hit OK, we'll see all of our visibilities change. For our fixtures are now in there. The toolpath will recognize them. The simulation will recognize them. It hides our stock and displays our model. Once again, that first scribe is being driven by a sketch. You can see that they're off the corners right now, but when we updated our parameters, it updated the sketch. This just needs to be regenerated, since this geometry is actually looking at this entire sketch. Everything that's in that sketch is where it's pointing to, just like our setup is pointing to the part component. So without me actually selecting everything, I see it's still red, you can just regenerate it, and now you'll see you'll have a good corner scribe automatically without having to make extra sketches. Said this works when our part does have square corners. And then there's another empty scribe for you to select some burnouts. So this has no geometry selected. So we can come in here and we can grab some of our burnouts. Not that one. And now you'll have a scribe for your corners and a separate scribe for your burnouts. And then you can continue on toolpathing it till it's finished. I hope this makes it easier for you guys, whether you use it in Eternity or you use it to get a handle on the way Fusion works. Let me know, play with this weekend, and I'll keep updating it throughout with maybe some more functionality. Have a good one.